So I don't wish to, when it comes to economics, global economics. So the let me start by saying that the video audio podcast that precedes this video, I briefly mentioned to sanction and embargo America, but I misspoke out of frustration. Let me explain why. When it comes to global economics, I believe that no country should be imposed with tariffs or embargoes, any type of economical sanctions. The reason being because the ones that are to suffer are the populations of any country's citizenry, and they're not. Nations' populations shouldn't be subjugated economically because of the leaders of their nations. So I don't believe in starving innocent people by denying their economies to have means to su- to supply and aid human beings on earth. So I don't believe in starving nations with tariff sanctions or embargoes, economical embargoes. So another video that precedes this video, audio, when I say audio podcast, is that I believe that it should be outlawed for every nation to use economics as a weapon. Because, like I said, the ones to suffer are the innocents of humanity. When you starve a nation economically, the ones to suffer are the innocents of humanity. It doesn't matter what nation is inflicted with economical sanctions and embargoes or tariffs. The ones that suffer are the innocent ones. The elderly, the women and children, the young. So I don't believe in using economics as a weapon. Is where I'm getting at. So in the video that precedes this video, I misspoke and said that America should be embargoed or sanctioned, which to me, I don't believe in starving any nation populations. So what I want to reform is that when it comes to economics, to outlaw globally any nation economically being subverted, any nation. Because like I said, I believe that by doing that is unfair to the populations of any nation. No matter for what reason of leaderships that nation might have, we shouldn't take it out on their populations and use economics as weapons. Controlling economics and using it to starve nations into submission, that cannot be condoned. Because that's like genocide when you're starving a nation economically. The ones who die of hunger are the innocents. And the same, so I want to outlaw for every nation on earth using economics as a weapon. So I believe in making it illegal globally for any nation to sanction, tariff, or embargo economically any other nation. For whatever reasons, for whatever seat of government conflicts one head of state has with another head of state, their population shouldn't suffer by using economics as a weapon. So I want to outlaw in commerce and global economics, I want to outlaw the ability to economically sanction or embargo or tariff any nation, regardless of the conflict of the heads of states of any nation bickering and arguing with each other as individual prime ministers or presidents or even kings. It doesn't matter what the conflict is about. You shouldn't starve a nation's population. That should be illegal, to starve a nation population when it comes to economics. Like Palestine and Cuba, are perfect examples of economical genocide. And so, to me, nations shouldn't use their monopolies or whatever leverage they have to starve nations genocidically into starvation, only to submit a nation to their imposing powers, as far as starving nations into submission. That's no good. Because the innocence of nations' populations, they shouldn't be used as an example just to show the leadership a harsh stance against their leadership. That should not, the innocents should be protected at all costs, no matter what seat of government resides in their republics. So I don't believe in starving people, women, children, elderly, young people. I don't believe in starving humanity. So it shouldn't be condoned as a weapon, economical weapon. So therefore, I want unanimously that all the nations don't resort to using economics as a weapon. But this can only happen when all nations are permanent members of the Security Council. Nuclear disarmament for every nation on Earth. No more nuclear weapons when it comes to wars. Because we need to disarm all nuclear armed nations. But this can only happen when all nations in the world are permanent members of the Security Council. To have 100% disarmament from all nuclear armed nations without no prejudice. 100% disarmament for all nuclear armed nations. And like I said, no prejudice. It's a unanimous disarmament for all nuclear armed nations, regardless of what politics you're bickering about. All nations that possess nuclear weapons will give it up and disarm it in order to safeguard humanity. But that can only happen when all nations are permanent members of the Security Council. And to then, we're living in dangerous times. That's why my death is falling on deaf ears in Washington, D.C. Because I don't know what Washington wants. To disarm the Eastern Alliance of nuclear weapons and only keep the Western nuclear weapons stockpiled pointed at the world for hegemonic power over the world. That's not gonna fly. A monopoly of disarming, like we're trying to disarm Iran when Israel has nuclear weapons that it doesn't want to disclose of itself, and Israel is busy attacking all their neighbors. See, so if the West try to keep their nuclear advantage and then try to disarm the global South or Eastern Europe nuclear weapons, then you can start to see that something might break out. A nuclear holocaust, or may I say a nuclear mutually assured destruction. So I don't care if it's the West or the East. I don't care. I want a unanimous vote of all members of all nations as permanent members of the Security Council. All nations on Earth, unanimously, without prejudice, disarming every nuclear armed nation, right down to the last missile or the last nuclear weapon. 100% disarmament. That's why I'm calling and insisting for every nation on Earth, including Palestine, to be recognized as a nation, but all nations to be seated at the table equally with their equal sovereign votes. Every nation got their one sovereign votes as member nations. So every sovereign nation are permanent members, and each nation has their sovereign votes. A vote per nation, meaning that vote represents that sovereign nation. So every nation has their one sovereign vote as permanent members of the Security Council. And that's going to be the first docket to pass into global accords, is mutually assured disarmament for all nuclear armed nations. Mutually, without prejudice. Every nuclear armed nation will give up their stockpiles completely. 100% disarmament. Now let's go back to the economic theories. So I don't believe in using economics as a weapon. Like the Israel government is starving out the Palestinians, hoping they will flee the Gaza Strip so they can redevelop it, like Trump's Arab Commonwealth. That cannot be tolerated. Starving people genocidically or killing people genocidically, that cannot be tolerated. Starving Cuba into the Dark Ages by blocking their access to energy and letting them starve without medicines, without hospitals, without food, without power to live in and starve genocidically in the Dark Ages, that cannot be tolerated. So for that reason, I want to outlaw that any nation on earth uses economics as a weapon. Because the only people that are to suffer from that is the innocent populations. They don't have nothing to do with the seat of governments. Some nations have their own political ruling powers, and the nations have to obey the bureaucracy. So they don't. Sometimes you gotta let democracy take place how nations, seat of governments, and their populations agree. So if nations don't see eye to eye with each other, that doesn't mean we gotta starve their populations. Like, take for example, Trump threatening to destroy the drinking water desalination plants of Iran for 90 plus million people to die of thirst. That is a genocidal threat. So, for the love of oil wars, it shouldn't be tolerated. Genocide shouldn't be tolerated in any shape, form whatsoever. So, that also applies with economics. We shouldn't use economic currency as a weapon in forms of tariffs, in forms of sanctions or embargoes. Because the population has not to be prosecuted for the seat of leaderships. When presidents or prime ministers or kings don't see eye to eye, that doesn't mean that the populations have to be punished and starved. Let me repeat this again, and I want you to pay attention to this. When a president or a prime minister or a king of a nation don't see eye to eye, their populations shouldn't have to face the brunt of the punishment, because their populations is humanity. And just because figureheads as heads of states don't see eye to eye with bickering back and forth, that doesn't mean that their populations have to be taken out and angered by suppressing any nation's populations into starvation. So for that reason, I want to outlaw globally for every nation not to be able to use economics as a weapon. Now, America controls the world reserve currency, and under the Republicans, they are willing to starve the whole world, to submit the whole world by starving them with 100% tariffs if they dare decouple from the dollar. That is economical genocide, a one nation trying to starve the rest of the world and humanity to the whims of the greed of one nation's currency. And that cannot be tolerated. For one nation to peg the rest of the world dependency on fossil fuels to one nation's currency, the greenback, and then to insist that if any nation there decouples, or all the nations on earth there decouples, that they will be tariffed 100%. See, you can't use currency as a weapon, let alone to starve the population on earth with 100% tariffs. That is a crime against humanity. So when you don't adhere to the Human Rights Organization or to the World Health Organization, and you charter your own path as a tyranny, that should not be condoned from a world sole superpower. Let alone the word world superpower. Or may I say the world soul superpower. The key word there is soul. Meaning one nation to contradict the rest of the nations on earth, where tyranny should not be tolerated. One nation shouldn't impose their wills on the rest of the nations on earth and try to submit them in their submissions of wills. That if the world there decouples from one nation's currency, somehow that world soul, superpower, emphasis on the soul, superpower, has the power to starve the rest of the nations on earth. Those are words of tyrannical leaders to insinuate that. So for that reason, I want to outlaw any nation, including the United States, from using economics as a weapon. And I don't believe in no nation having the world reserve currency. That's not a fair system. For the rest of the nations on earth to follow the whims of one nation's currency economic systems, that is an enslavement to the rest of commerce of all nations on earth. So I want to break the shackles of that enslavement. So what I am suggesting when it comes to economics is to outlaw any ability of any nation waging economical blockades, economical tariffs, or economical sanctions. To outlaw and prohibit that in the global order. Because I don't believe in starving out humanity. Just because a leader doesn't see eye to eye with another leader, that's not the reason to starve out any population on earth, no matter what country they come from. So I want to pass an amendment for consideration to make it illegal for any nation to use economics as a weapon, where it comes to economical embargoes, economical sanctions, economical tariffs. It shouldn't be allowed. Who gives the right for one nation to starve another nation out genocidically with economical starvations? Who gives the right to commit that atrocity upon humanity? I believe no one has that right. So these are the reforms that I am the theologian of, as far as to make the world a better place, to make every nation equal at the table, to make the League of Nations, the United Nations, and the laws of the open seas to reform for the greater good. To bring peace and humanity together, because together we stand to gain peace and prosperity. United we stand, divided we fall. Let us unite in these efforts. Let us reform.